everyone, and welcome to one of the strangest beer farmers shows you'll ever imagine. We are literally here in the pub where I do another video podcast, but because I could get Lisa, who's a partner at Red Goat Security and also a valued member of the Beer Farmers, and Nikki, Global Channel Manager for C360 in her real life, but also the alias pirate captain of the TBF. Anyways, welcome to, again, a video podcast, and I think we're going to kick it off right now with sort of a broader discussion. We had talked earlier in sort of the post-production about how we're going to define this show and the content that we're going to talk about. And I think, Lisa, if you want to kick it off, because, you talked about kind of the story arc for this episode. So what are we going to talk about?
I think we need to talk about innovation and changes within the sort of tech and cyber landscape and how that has a positive and negative impact on citizens, consumers, but then also the cyber industry as well, and the net effect of that on our image, I guess, as an industry, I suppose.
I think that's great, because what we can do is immediately now get Nikki to give her thoughts on where are we going. How do you see the UK as a market right now? It's a bit turbulent times, is it not?
Yeah, I think it is, Ian. I think the way that we operate in the vendor space needs to change, and needs to change drastically. I don't like the FUD. I don't like the way that we've weaponized cyber attacks as vendors. We weaponize it, and all it leads to is scaremongering. And to be honest, I think it's really dangerous, and I don't know how we begin to regulate that, but I think there's a lot of stuff that's coming in, new bills coming in around managed service providers and things, which I think is really important and necessary right now for the UK's security market to become, a lot more in line with each other, basically. We all know that there's not one sort of silver bullet that fixes everything, and I think vendors need to work more together rather than against each other. And I know that sounds like, an ideal that might not be possible, but that's the way that we need to move forward, because we all need to work together.
I think that's a really great idea, but I think in practice, though, we see this breaking down on a pretty regular basis. There is this, I think, innate thing where your cybersecurity defenses haven't been updated in a while. Your company suffers a cyber event, and then they wish they had contacted Lisa, who can walk them through a tabletop exercise about how to maybe approach a cybersecurity disaster without their hair on fire. Lisa, are you seeing a lot of businesses coming to you trying to be proactive, or do you mostly see them after they've had an incident and they set everything on fire and it was just a very costly exercise for them?
A bit of both, actually. I think there's definitely been a very marked shift in the UK and European market towards resilience as opposed to just defense, and thinking about what will we do and how will we detect a compromise, and what would we then do and how would we handle it, and what's the media look like on that and things like that. I think there's definitely been a shift towards that. I think the US is a much more developed market, I think across the board, actually, both defensively and from a resilience standpoint. I think they are overall more, and I know that's a generalization. Conversely, in Asia, it's actually the opposite. I think Europe is actually more sort of developed in that space than the Asian markets, which are a little bit behind on some of those elements. But I think resilience is a really important thing, and actually a lot of the companies that I've spoken to who've been in a situation, especially with like a double extortion ransomware attack, the ones that haven't paid have actually said they wish they had, because the damage was so great, the cost was so massive, and it's not about reputation, it's about financial cost and how that hits your bottom line and the impact of that on everything. And I think, like Nikki said, the thing that annoys me about vendors often is that message that they push out is, if you have a cyber attack, you will have this massive fine from the ICO, and your reputation will go, and all your clients will go, and your share price will bottom out. But the evidence doesn't back any of that up, because the ICO are not issuing fines that are sticking, and the share prices are not dropping, certainly not for a long period of time. So again, you're kind of missing the entire point, which is it's going to cost you money to get Mandiant or whoever in to do your forensics and your recovery. That's the cost.
It's interesting because, obviously the UK, and because they've done Brexit, they're looking at perhaps changing a lot of the legislation around those very issues. But the EU regulator came out with their report saying that, they fined tech a lot of money, right? Like I think it was $1 billion plus, right? But it was like Google and Facebook and Meta and, I'm going to call them the regular offenders, right? Have you seen, Nikki, in the mid-market, anyone sort of in fear of the ICO coming?
No, and I think back to Lisa's point there as well, I think that is the crux of it. It is about how much it's going to cost them. We've moved away from reputational damage, and sort of you just mentioned about Brexit and stuff. It's all very well us bringing in something else that regulates it, but how do we enforce it? We've seen the ICO and we've watched what's happened with GDPR.
British Airways, they gave them what? Was it 70% discount?
It was like 156, and then they bargained it down to 27, and probably payable over 5 years at 0% interest rate. Call now. It is. You're absolutely right. Like, and then we don't even talk about the amount of money that was handed from the coffers during the pandemic to British Airways, right? Which probably comes out to more than 27 million. So they might be up on the deal. You brought up a really interesting thing about a criminality, and that's like a trigger word, especially for us folks. Crime is changing. Crime seems to have become, especially when it comes to fraud, it seems, and Bitcoin, which is another technology I think we need to pay attention to in 2023. But what are your thoughts? Like, is Bitcoin suffering from a reputational problem because the headlines are always scandal, ransomware, seized wallet, 45 Bitcoin in the wallet from, some guy in Canada, living in his mother's basement? What do you see? Like, is this going to continue, or?
I think anyone watching this, when you say, what are your thoughts on crypto, are going to go, oh no, here we go,
strap in.
Buckle up.
I think it's unfair to single out Bitcoin. Okay. I don't think that's right. Actually, Bitcoin is less of a problem than some of the privacy coins that we see that cause much, much more difficulty in terms of like chain analysis on them. I think the problem that you have, that the crypto industry to some extent is realizing, even if they don't want to admit that they're realizing it, is that the sort of traditional finance models have to some degree learned lessons over the years on things like bank runs, liquidity ratios. They've learned things about, consumer protection.
AML.
We've had a lot of incidents that have cost a lot of money, right? That's the first thing. And so there is a lot of regulation there that, at least if they're even just paying lip service to, they are paying lip service to. Crypto is realizing that actually decentralization, the issue with it is you don't have anyone enforcing rules that protect consumers or protect exchanges or protect businesses that are operating on the blockchain. So they're learning that lesson, which I think is a challenge because you can't be decentralized but have a centralized regulator. The two things conflict, right? So I think that's a really big challenge in the crypto space that we'll see a lot of. And I think the other problem that you have is you have like almost a cult-like following in a lot of the crypto blockchain space that isn't necessarily founded in reality. And it's a lovely dream and it's a lovely idealistic view of the world.
Is there any figurehead that you might call out specifically that might be falling into that category?
I feel like he might have big hair. I don't know though.
And this is a great point because this is the time I think that we can talk about SBF and his future struggles with regulatory bodies, and not to mention
the
criminal
man isn't
charges.
even 30. Can you imagine when you were that young being in this situation?
I don't know why a responsible investor would give him money in the first place when his qualifications appear to be, I like to spend money on fast cars, vacation homes, and hookers. So I feel like SBF is like a zeitgeist of this new sort of quick win, fast cash, make money overnight. Because you were sharing something about a story about, people are putting this stuff up on Instagram that, by the power of money laundering, you can make a lot of money.
Yeah. And I mean, it's rife, isn't it? And it's not just in sort of like my local town. It's in a lot of local towns. There's a lot of teenagers sort of from the age of 18 to 24 that are falling into this trap. It's kind of, we've had county lines. They're now encouraging children to money launder. I'm going to ask Lisa just because I want to hear the answer to this.
Okay.
Why do you think people invested in him? What do you think he had that made investors want to give him that much money?
Hope. I think it was hope. I think that's why people invest in all of this stuff, and why you see a spike in it during times where you're seeing global recession and you're seeing cost of living crises, because it's not about, people blame consumers and think, oh, it's a get rich quick thing, they're so stupid. I actually think it's a sign that people are a little bit desperate, and they think that this is going to be a way to save themselves in some capacity and make a better life for themselves. You saw that with Herbalife, right? Herbalife, the pyramid scheme that isn't a pyramid scheme, preyed on the Latino community in America because they were undocumented and they didn't have money, and so they preyed on them to make money. It's the same thing. So I think that's how he got the money that he did, and I think that also helps because the people who are investing aren't super savvy hedge funds who are doing due diligence. They're people, ordinary people, like you said, people on Instagram, who don't go and look into the financials of this situation. They wouldn't even know where to begin to look into the company, which means you can, like Ian has realized, you can con them out of a lot of money. And that's what he has done to many vulnerable communities around the world.
Okay, and I think what we're going to do is we're going to move on to a new topic now. New topic, and actually kind of a funny topic, because I was just advised by the Kazakhstan government that I am actually sitting with the #1 tourist influencer in Kazakhstan.
2022.
But I also wanted to talk a little bit about your experiences of being over in Japan recently, because what is the perspective of places like Kazakhstan and Japan on what's going on in the UK in terms of our economy, the experiment of, hey, we're going to take $65 billion and just give it away to the people, and the IMF went, no, you're not. What is the perception? Are we viewed here in the UK as being out of control?
To the Japanese, I would say almost certainly. The Kazakhs are very different people, but to the Japanese, they're very risk-averse people indeed, and actually very inward-looking as well, so they're probably not that interested in what we're doing, because actually, they're doing better, so it doesn't really matter to them.
Are they worried about China, though?
Really worried about China, yeah. And actually, I read when I was out there that Japan's military spending has skyrocketed, and actually they now spend, I think per capita, the third greatest amount in the world on military, which is quite impressive given that they haven't been allowed a military for a very long period of time.
Well, they've always had Gundam Wing and a whole bunch of other really scary things. So, oh, wait a minute. That might be the anime. I'm not sure.
That's the illusion. You don't know.
That's right.
What is their capability with those robots?
Well, that was back in the 1990s. Imagine what they have now.
Exactly.
Like, wow.
Well, you are now in the Japanese military, I hear.
Yeah. Yes, I was awarded my enlistment little badge. It looks super cute.
Yeah.
So I'll make sure to wear that the next time I go through Tokyo and Niigata. Yeah,
The
I'm sure
joystick
it's
on
like
its
some sort of pink cat thing. So what, in terms of Japanese culture, I mean, you were talking a little bit about the differences in bandwidth that is available in Japan, even on the public Wi-Fi. Do you want to sort of describe where they are technologically versus, say, our hometowns?
It's a really strange place. It's kind of, so I was hiking, and you can be in the middle of the mountains, basically in the middle of nowhere. And in this particular case, there was this tunnel that was like a kilometer long underneath the mountains, right? We had to walk through to get to the other side. And in the middle of this kilometer-long tunnel that was buried under the ground, there was 4G signal somehow that was faster than I've ever got in the UK. And I'm like, but why?
Yeah.
Why have you got such fast internet in this tunnel? And that's very indicative of Japan. It's kind of one of these things where basically the new technology that they've put in is absolutely phenomenal, but it's ultimately sitting upon absolute crap. And so you've got this kind of weird situation. For example, they have no ability to stock check on websites. They're stores for the most part. Like, they're not really using Uber, they're not using apps. They're very much, in some respects, behind. But then in terms of like the new innovation that's coming out, much, much further ahead. So it's a bit of a weird place, I think, for that. But ultimately a brilliant country.
Cool. I'm glad you enjoy it. We're going to go back a little bit now into domestic matters. What are your customers talking about? Like looking at 2023, if they had to pick, what key areas are we going to invest in technology? What are they coming to you? What's the conversations?
A lot of the conversations that I've had so far this year are around security awareness training.
Yep.
It's one of my frustrations, I think, because they're coming because they want cyber insurance and
Cyber insurance is telling them you got to have it.
Yeah, and cyber essentials.
Yeah.
It's a huge passion of mine that I don't think it should be a tick box exercise. I think it's something that, good cyber hygiene, they should be doing that monthly at the very least. It should be something that's ongoing. So for us as a vendor, we're basically encouraging that. If you want to do security awareness training and you want to take the solution, absolutely fine, you take it, but you commit for a year. You can pay for it monthly, you can do whatever you like with it, but we want it to be ongoing. You're not just going to come along, blanket, put it out like as a blanket to your organisation and then cancel it in a month because you've got your insurance and cyber essentials, because I just don't think that's good practice. For us, I think that's huge this year.
I think that's a really interesting point as well, because I've actually had conversations with, as Dan Card would call them, normies.
Right.
And actually, I think sometimes when you have conversations with people who are not at all connected to the cybersecurity or privacy sectors, you realise how delusional we are as an industry as to where they are, and people doing things like, I haven't updated my Creative Cloud for a year, and I'm like, what? Why haven't you? Or like they're using the same password, or someone logging into their Gmail on a hotel TV, and you're like, it's not necessarily
so it can be there for everyone the next time you do.
Right, and that's not a massively targeted threat, but it is indicative of the fact that you don't value those login credentials because you're putting them into a TV in a hotel room, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's a really good point as well. We're not at a point where normal people, I think, are adopting it in the same way as physical security. And I think that, like Nikki said, that's the problem, because it's a tick box. It's like, I've just got to do it, done.
I think the only way, though, that we're ever going to, we've spent years now, the last 5 years saying, cybersecurity is important, your insider threats, your staff are basically, you need to train them. I think the only way that we're ever going to get around this is education. It needs to start really young.
I agree.
We don't teach children, we give them sort of a smartphone at the age of like 9, 10. That is a computer. We don't teach them how to use it properly. We don't teach them
safely.
Securely. We don't teach them how to use the internet as a whole safely. We don't teach them about passwords and managing their passwords and all of that. That needs to start at a really young age, and that's the only way you're going to change the mindset. It is education. I've seen some things recently actually shared, isn't there? There's a new online bill. I think Sarah Armstrong-Smith was quite behind it a couple of weeks ago, and that is around that, about there needs to be, so in both my children's schools, one goes to a mixed school, one goes to a boys' school, they have very different education around their online safety. It's very different messaging. And I think there's a bill at the moment that they're trying to get pushed through, which basically standardises, it's part of the curriculum and it's all taught to the same standards that everybody, but that's the only way we're ever going to change it, because, I speak to organisations daily that, as Lisa just said, have got nothing to do with this industry whatsoever. They haven't got a clue. And, why should they? Why have they ever needed to? Why should they? And unless they've been hit with some kind of attack, they still don't really see the benefit or why they need to be doing it. And you can scaremonger as much as you like, and you can use all the horror stories, but you still ultimately, and I hear it daily, it won't happen to us. Why would they be interested in our data? Why would they want to attack us? And as I say, the only way we're going to change that is starting from a really young age.
Cool. So there is a new technology on the horizon. We've heard a lot about it. It's sort of like AI and Chat GPT and these type of new things. Now, I personally have found a lot of success using Chat GPT to generate phishing emails for targeted companies. However, that's probably more of a fringe use case of it.
Most of our pyramid scheme emails came from Chat GPT, if you remember.
That's right, yeah. And before that, the pills and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So the real funny part about this whole scenario that we're in is that it seems like where we were about 3 years ago when they were talking about the metaverse. It seems like this is now the thing, right? And is it here to stay, or do you feel like it's going to be like, there's going to be advantages, disadvantages, but eventually it'll just sort of fall into the background and no one will really care about it? What do you think?
So, What do I think? Well, my big issue actually with the cyber community generally is that we tend to be, we get a bit of a bad reputation for new stuff coming out and instantly reactively going, well, this is bad because this will give attackers this and this will compromise that and this will do this, right?
Right. That's
For
the
everything.
narrative. Yeah.
Absolutely everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everything that's come out, we have gone for big time and gone, We've never actually really sat down and gone, okay, how do we work with IoT people or crypto people or AI people to make it secure, make it usable, make it something that people can use and enjoy and enhance their lives, but is also secure. We don't tend to have that conversation. So that's my big issue with immediately going for the jugular with these new technologies, because you just sound like an old granny who sat there going, no, in my day you wouldn't have done that. It just sounds ridiculous. Like, we're in tech, let's just be a little bit innovative here. I really like ChatGPT. I think it's really good. I think there's clear limitations to it, and I think the prompts that you put into it are what's the key thing.
The art, yeah.
The art is definitely the prompts. I think there's a danger that you still need to fact check some of the stuff that's coming out of it, because it's not necessarily guaranteed and people might assume it is. I think that's the biggest danger. But to say that somehow this has like made attackers' lives easier is an absolute fiction, in my opinion, because they were really good at hitting people with phishing emails long before ChatGPT came out.
Right,
I really don't think it's made their operation particularly slicker.
Well, there's talk that this is going to replace like programmers, and it's going to replace illustrators. Once you can say, I want a badger and a top hat, and you get 50 AI versions of what you want.
But it might make their jobs slicker. It might take out some of the mundane stuff they have to do so that they can focus on innovating and pushing things forward. So again, I think
double-edged sword,
and that's what innovation is.
But we always seem to want to hack it with a cutlass, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're right, and I think that's true. What were your thoughts? Were any of your customers talking about metaverse or AI? Or
Yeah, I think Lisa's kind of summed up what I think about it as well. I don't like the way that we attack it. I don't believe it's made some cyber criminals' jobs any more easier or slicker. I don't agree it's going to replace people, because I think it's a tool. These things are tools, and if they're going to make developers' jobs easier, then I'm all for it.
Yeah.
But I completely agree with Lisa as well. It does depend on what you're putting in. It still needs a human element to it. I think I work, in the SME market, so we're a long way behind the enterprises even talking about it. If I chat GPT at any of them, they'd probably just look at me like I'd just grown 3 heads. So no, but I do think they're tools, and what you said, I think as an industry, the resource that we've got these great new tools coming along, the same as with AI. Let's work together and make sure that they do work properly and make sure they're actually beneficial to us.
Yeah.
But I think we're a long way off chat GPT, and the same with AI replacing humans anyway. I think a long way off from that. I don't think it'll disappear though. No, I don't think. It's not going to disappear. It's not going away. But I think that before we all jump on the bandwagon, we do need to come out and we need to make them usable for people. Let's use this amazing technology that's coming out and make it usable. Use it as a tool, add it to our toolkit. It's only enhancing what we all do. That's my take on it.
That's cool. So I guess now we can go to sort of an open table or something like that. What's on your mind, Lisa? What in 2023 are you interested in or want to try and accomplish or grow the business?
There's one thing I'd kind of like to bring up before we move on to accomplishments or lack thereof. And I think one thing that's kind of interesting is I think to bring in the sort of Russia war in Ukraine situation and this, obviously 2 things. Firstly, some elements of the cyber community were always like, cyber warfare. Well, this is going to be, cyber Pearl Harbor. It's going to be this massive thing, and it didn't happen. Which I've actually derived quite a lot of enjoyment from watching that not happen. And in some ways, it is a shame because I think kinetic warfare is more brutal and cyber is actually less brutal than kinetic warfare.
In the winter is that definitely
totally. But it hasn't happened. What has happened, which I think is quite interesting, is the line between not being a black hat hacker or an activist or whatever versus being a cybersecurity community professional versus being whatever is now very blurred.
Yes.
And I think it's more blurred as a result of the Russia-Ukraine conflict than it ever has been. And it worries me a little bit. And the reason it worries me is perhaps a little bit oblique, in the sense that actually there's been a real drive, both in the US and in the UK, to provide better sort of black letter law safeguards for researchers, to be able to research vulnerabilities in products without being caught out, right, and going to jail, as we all know people who have had that issue happen to them. And I think that erodes the work that has happened with that, because by people getting involved in sort of hacktivist activity, I feel that there's a real danger there that the courts and the governments are going to say, no, this is all criminal behaviour, and the impact that will have on research in cyber will be huge.
I see how you're coming around, that sort of desire to do X in patriotic zeal or to side with the Ukraine is now causing folks to develop skills that are potentially incredibly dangerous. And if they're not making a conscious decision about that, and they're just being, like you said, recruited by organizations,
and making sure your target is correct.
Yeah, making sure the target is correct. Absolutely. There are huge, I would say, ethical ramifications as well that are worthy of note. I would say, though, that when you look at an organization like Anonymous, who is a bit of a blunt instrument in terms of what they do to countries that transgress what we call normal rules, that's activism, just like it would be to be protesting in the streets, is the other side of that argument. And I think we are into uncharted waters where publicly demonstrating something in a peaceful manner is not necessarily against the law yet, but resorting to your keyboard and launching cyber attacks could be construed, especially with nation-state affiliation, as a cyber attack subject to Article 5, depending on how massive the impact would be. I mean,
I don't think you could call it peaceful protesting in any capacity, though. The moment that you gain unauthorized access into a network or a device, that's not peaceful protesting.
Well, especially if it causes massive damage to to a country's infrastructure, right? What do you think?
I think we have to be careful. I think, kind of you just said, I was about to disagree with you about the peaceful protesting, because I don't agree that it is peaceful. I think it's really dangerous. I think it's unethical. And my concern is, and we've seen it for years, we've seen cyber criminal gangs grooming young people. We know great examples that have been publicly in the news, grooming young people, to kind of join their gangs or whatever else. It worries me that you're going to have young people that are incredibly talented that would come into the industry as an ethical hacker that are going to be taken off on a different path, and we're moving away from them taking off and doing like the talk attack, that kind of thing. That's a good example of what I'm talking about. To go in and be doing stuff that's like nation state attacks and really, really damaging.
Well, when you look at Team Poison, you look at the TalkTalk data breaches, the Sony attacks, and then end up supporting jihads. This is a clear ethical wander, right?
And there are sort of vigilante hacking groups out there. We know that there are vigilante hacking groups out there that I genuinely believe that they do think that they're doing good.
Yeah.
But we've seen evidence of it all over the place.
What information as well? Because you could argue that the people on our side of the fight, they're doing good, right? But then on the Russian side, they think the same thing, right?
Yeah, right.
So how do we now?
You can be a patriot on both sides, right?
So how do you deconflict that? Who's right, who's wrong? Because we're both being fed propaganda in different ways.
And especially when what you're actually attacking may be something related to, a national critical health issue in Russia. Hospitals are off limits. Right, and
only they haven't been.
Well, certainly they haven't been from the perspective of Russian threat actors on North American and UK, but also conversely, the Russians are busy bombing Ukrainian hospitals, like kinetic war, as we talked about. It seems like no one is drawing back. No one is drawing any lines anymore.
Yeah.
We got a little bit antsy when nuclear power plants were getting shelled which I think rightly so. We should be concerned.
There are concerns there.
There are concerns there. But yeah, I mean, launching a cyber attack on a nuclear power plant that results in some sort of catastrophic meltdown, that's consequences.
I don't think cyber is that useful, though. I don't think it's that useful.
I think it would have been done already.
Right. I think it's a subversive tool. And I think it's something that could be a force amplifier, like when they took the American drone down in Iran. You know, I think then it's super useful. If I can hack into that drone and take it down, great, right? Yeah. It's a great force amplifier.
Hey, look, free drone.
Exactly, free drone. Everyone loves a free drone. Nikki got a free drone, I think, at the last conference. So she's basically exactly the same position.
Still sat in the box.
Yeah, really?
Yeah.
Oh, you haven't used it for illegal surveillance?
No.
Oh, come on. What are you doing?
She has. She's just not admitting because of the camera.
Oh, okay.
No,
I sometimes forget that we're on camera.
I know, that's the problem. That's why those regulators are looking into you.
Just the last point on Lisa's point there about hackers, and you said about nuclear warfare, and you said about it not being that useful. I do think we have to go careful because we're almost glorifying, you know, these targets to hacking groups, basically. You know, if I was a youngster at the moment and I was 17 and I was wanting to make an impression in a group, what am I going to go after? I'm going to go after hospitals. I'm going to go after national grid. I just think we just have to be really careful about what we put out there. And the other thing is as well, we all read too much propaganda. We believe what we read, and I think for our industry specifically, it's really dangerous. We believe everything we read, and I think we've got to be a lot more objective about what we're reading, whose narrative we're reading, and we kind of have to be a bit more grown up about it.
And the agenda behind that article. I totally
and what's that
agree.
leading us to?
And is it balanced? Because even I think the worst thing is we are very in tune with the fact that Russians are putting out propaganda, and we're like, Russia propaganda, you know, that's the big thing. But I don't think we're very good at going, we're being fed propaganda in the other direction. And I'm buying it because it fits my narrative, which is exactly what's happening on the other side of the fence. And I think that's kind of an interesting...
Well, I think, you know, I guess what we'll do is we'll sort of look at final thoughts from each of you, and then we'll wrap it up. How's that sound?
Good.
So let's start with Nikki. What are some of your sort of final thoughts on where we're going in 2023? Pearls of wisdom.
2023, where would I like to see us go? I'm going to be, for myself personally, I'm going to be a huge advocate this year behind education. It's something that I feel really strongly about. So yeah, that's going to be my personal goal. Business-wise this year, it is all about making sure that the SME market have access through MSSPs to what I'd call proper cybersecurity awareness training, because if not, we're going to see lots and lots of vendors spinning up saying that they're doing something that actually they're not, and it's not beneficial. What else? 2023, loads more stuff for the beer farmers, because this is quite cool. Quite like the fact that I'm drinking before midday, so that's definitely at the top of my list. Yeah, just looking forward to getting back to exhibition season, really. Yeah, that's me.
And Lisa.
I think in terms of what I would like to see is more global cooperation, and I mean that not UK, US, and that's it, right? Because there's some really interesting stuff going on in Argentina, there's some really interesting stuff going on in Asia, there's some really interesting stuff, Azerbaijan, all these other countries that are doing really cool stuff, and we're not learning from them because all we ever do is go, oh, look at the US, and then the US goes, let's look at the UK, and then that's all that happens. And I think that actually really hampers our ability to move forward, so I'd like to see a lot more collaboration in the community with people from other countries outside of the traditional Europe-US relationship. I think that would be
global
really
cyber ambassadorship.
Yeah, I just think it would be nice to have more global opinions on things that are happening in different countries, and you know, because it's not kind of a geographically bound crime, right? It kind of goes everywhere. So we're all fighting the same thing but differently. So I'd like to see that. And then, I'm just looking forward to being at events, like Nikki said, and learning and doing some more stuff, and launching our crypto scheme. Scheme.
Yeah, I get that word confused too.
I do. We need to be careful with that, especially on the email.
Dyslexia.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
What about you?
Fantastic. For me, I want to change the narrative from security to resiliency. I
Like
want
it.
to talk about global climate change and its impact on IT
Yeah.
supply chain, destabilization, political destabilization of countries,
Yeah.
and how the influence of the larger powers are creating these sort of very balkanized, very insular relationships that really need more transparency. We need to know where precious metals and precious minerals come from in order to make sure that we're procuring them in an ethically responsible way and in a way that accounts for the tremendous issues that we're going to face with global climate change. If it's 25 degrees centigrade in your server room right now during the winter months, and it suddenly goes to 40 degrees, are you prepared for that? And I think a lot of businesses are going to be really struggling with the physical implications of the massive shifts in temperature and things like that. So that's what I want to continue to advocate for and build more opportunities to talk about those issues. Well, that was the beer farmers from the pub, which is sort of appropriate for us. And I'd like to thank Lisa, the partner at Red Goat Security and Global Channel Manager for C360, Nikki, for joining me. Mike Thompson does send his regards to all of our audience and all of our followers in that he was unable to attend today. So thank you very much, and that's a wrap.